Walt Whitman was an American poet born in West Hills, New York on May 31, 1819. The second of 9 children born to Walter and Louisa Van Velser Whitman, he lived in New York as a journalist and editor. He had no wife but spoke of fathering 6 illegitimate children. When the American Civil War broke out, he went to look for his brother George in Virginia, reported wounded in action, and experienced the war firsthand as a volunteer nurse. This inspired his later works. He then went on to work for the Department of the Interior, but was fired when a copy of his poetry book was found by his boss, who discovered various sexual references. A friend got him a job at the Attorney General's office, where he remained until 1873. Although he published many books, by far the most famous is The Leaves of Grass, which has many versions, the most famous of which, and well known, is the deathbed version, so called because he wrote it on his deathbed. Walt Whitman died on March 26, 1892, in Camden, New Jersey. I Sit and Look Out is a famous poem by Walt Whitman, published in 1860. At first, the title makes you feel like he is awestruck by the world around him, but as you read, it all changes. I sit and look out upon all the sorrows of the world, and upon all oppression and shame. I hear secret, convulsive sobs from young men, at anguish with themselves, remorseful after deeds done. I see, in low life, the mother misused by her children, dying, neglected, gaunt, desperate. I see the wife misused by her husband. I see the treacherous seducer of young women. I mark the ranklings of jealousy and unrequited love, attempted to be hid. I see these sights on the earth. I see the workings of battle, pestilence, tyranny. I see martyrs and prisoners. I observe a famine at sea. I observe the sailors casting lots who shall be killed to preserve the lives of the rest. I observe the slights and degradations cast by arrogant persons upon laborers, the poor, and upon Negroes, and the like. All these, all the meanness and agony without end, I sitting, look out upon, see, hear, and am silent. Basically, what Whitman is saying is that he observes the regret of young men, misused and abused mothers, jealousy, battle, pestilence, tyranny, famine, and harsh oppressive labor cast on the poor and the African Americans. All this meaningless suffering he observes, hears, and is silent. This poem's connotation is sadness and suffering with a very, very negative attitude, but also frustration. A shift can be detected at the end when he says all these ... to emphasize the horrors, and suddenly reveals he is not doing anything about it, only passively observing. The theme of this poem is that if all we do is watch horrors around us, those horrors will overwhelm us. Now, looking back at the title, one can see that it is about a passive observer of meaningless horrors who needs to act. This poem was written in the context of pre-Civil War America, where the issue of slavery was dividing the nation apart, and many feared that there would never be a peaceful resolution, and indeed there wasn't. But Walt Whitman isn't just summarizing what he sees around him. The end line is a condemnation of himself, the sitting or passive observer, that we must act to bring this to an end. Whitman's call to action was soon heeded and started a 4-year war that cost millions of lives and caused lots of suffering, but achieved a greater, if imperfect, result. The greater lesson of this poem is to not be the passive bystander. Do not stand and watch. Do not remain silent. Act. Act on what you believe is right. Help others. Be the cause of change. In a greater context, Whitman believes that action is the only way to change, and while that may seem obvious, it might not be at the moment you need to act. Whether it's the schoolyard bully or in the context of the world, where nations must act to destroy oppressive regimes, as in the international coalitions did in Iraq, to send aid to those who need it, as many nations still do, or to receive and welcome those who are fleeing the very horrors discussed in this poem, as Turkey has done for Syrians. Action brings change, for better or for worse.